Hi, everybody. Well, it's almost spring. It's actually cold and wet out there this morning, but other than that, as you can see, we are in the shop. We are making tea tables. Junior and I are working on some wooden tea tables. We've made a couple of these already. They're kind of cute. They're shaker style, three-legged little tables with a top on them that's maybe 18 to 20 inches across, usually round. Um, we both do different parts of it. Junior does legs, I do the kind of the tops, and so that's kind of our project at the moment. We've been wandering back and forth about doing different kinds of projects. We talked about small boxes. We looked through. We kind of like doing shaker stuff. That the chairs that we were making earlier were essentially a kind of an Appalachian version of a shaker chair. Being they were curved back, the shakers were very plain in their furniture, mainly because they would hang them on the walls, the chairs would, so the backs were very straight. Kind of the Appalachian version, which was uh, brought into vogue by a gentleman in Baltimore, and so they kind of took off at that point. So people all over the country now make kind of what you would call the Baltimore, shaker chair. And they're very comfortable. I have one in the shop here that I use to sit on. So it's kind of a chair project, but we got away from chairs. We were kind of going, well, we made enough chairs. Everybody's got a chair. I have one sitting in the bedroom. So I mean, it's one of those things where we needed to do something else. So we kind of looked around the shaker world again and started looking for things. And Junior last year found that the tea tables were very, very cute. They're very interesting. From a standpoint of woodworking, they're really kind of cool because the center pedestal, it's about a 20-inch high. Oh, I don't know. Actually, they're probably 25 or 26 inches high at the top, but they have usually a 20-inch centerpiece, which is made up, and we then turn that on a lathe so that it's actually kind of a gentle curve, so it has a really nice look to it. Underneath it has a decorative kind of center post, and then at the bottom there's three legs, and they are really interesting because they really didn't use like lots of nails and things like that. So actually, what was done is they cut slots up into the base that were triangular in shape, and then they would create their legs with a triangular fitting piece that went up into it. So basically, you would take and put the feet on it and drive it up into these slots, which would lock it into place so it wouldn't ever move after that. And they were still all wood, no nails, no nothing. A little glue sometimes. Actually, the only time we use glue is probably on the top itself, where we have to glue a number of pieces together to make a wider stuff, 20-inch wide wood. We've done one like that, but by and large today it's rather hard and expensive to put 20-inch wood. So we will use oak, white oak, red oak, different kinds of woods, ash, and we will glue slices of them together to make like a butcher block top, which is then we use that to use as the center top piece. So it's been kind of a fun way of doing that. So anyway, that's been the wood project over the winter. Actually, not much has happened during the winter. It's cold. I'm old. I don't like being in the cold, so I don't spend much time down here, especially during the winter when it was cold. I actually had pneumonia earlier this year, so I was kind of knocked down for a while. And so it's really the first of the year when I've had a chance to get down here and cut, saw, make sawdust, which is what we do most. We make wood chips. So the Greene County woodcrafters are mostly wood chip makers. But anyway, so it's kind of going along. As you can see, there are tractors behind me, and grass is going to be growing here, or actually is growing. All we need is just a little bit more temperatures. It's been rather cold this spring in some ways, so the grass hasn't been growing very much, and that's going to happen. That's going to change very rapidly. So it's going to be out there mowing lawn and getting that done and over with. So it's just the beginning of the year. So this is kind of my first shot at saying this is the beginning of the year. The world is in terrible condition. The Russians are beating up on the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians really just, I think Russia figured that they would just roll over. And actually, they didn't. So they basically said, no, you ain't going to do this. We're going to go to the last man to make sure you don't get this. And the question pops up a lot at times about, well, why is the Ukraine all that important? That if you go back in history and start looking at it, the Ukraine is an incredibly important place. It was one of the first major parts of the early Tsarist, area that they took even before the revolution, because it is the breadbasket and the mineral center of much of Russia. I mean, so they have very fertile ground, big areas where you would produce lots and lots of resources, minerals, food, whatever. So the Ukraine has been very important to the early czars. It certainly was important with Stalin and as we moved away from the Second World War, and Putin is the same way. And I think for Putin, it's rather interesting that Russia broke up, and I mean that was part of our work. The Reagan administration basically starved them out, so they had to break up. And after the breakup, Ukraine became independent, along with other states along the way, the Baltic states and different things. And when Putin came into power, I think that because he was born in the end of the Second World War, and he lived through the Stalinist regime, wasn't purged, so for whatever reason it was, he was still alive. He was a KGB guy. He was born and raised in that world and was taught by them. So he's really an O-line Soviet guy. And I think that there's a part of him that says, you know what? I really think that I want to make Russia as it was. I want to see us back to be the great Soviet Union. I mean, he has nukes. Actually, one of the things that's really important is we forget the man has nukes. And the odd part is that back in the day when they were the Soviet Union, a big chunk of those nukes were actually held in the Ukraine. Now, I'm not sure why, whether it was related to, the power at the time or what have you. But the Ukraine tends to be, for Russia, a very important place. And I think that that's why he wants it back. I mean, I think he's willing to not go any farther because the NATO countries are pretty settled. You ain't gonna, if he messes with NATO, he opens up this war into really a global conflict because he's going to go head to head with the United States. And the United States has been rather interesting because Biden has very carefully stayed away from that point. He will not mess with them unless somebody steps over the line and Putin wants to go into Europe. The Europeans really don't want this. Why? Because 30% of their energy comes out of Russia. Their gas, their oil, lots of things. They produce about 30% of their energy is bought from Russia. The Europeans really don't want this thing to get big and crazy because they get hurt much worse than we do. Our issue of going, we're going to sanction him and not let any of his oil into our country, it means nothing to us. Basically, we have more oil than God knows, and we can export it. We have more than enough to even run the whole country on our own oil, not necessarily needing anything from him. I think we get about 10% from the Russians now. Remember, we get Venezuelan oil, we get Russian oil, we get all kinds of oil from different places in the world. And actually, because of climate, the Biden administration has not really let our oil guys drill a lot. They're kind of constrained by the fact that we're really relying more on European, Venezuelan, other oil, and Saudi Arabia for that matter. And we're basically kind of sitting on our own oil. The president has talked about, we're going to release a million barrels of oil from our reserves. Well, that was really to cover kind of a shortfall into the Gulf states. They really needed a little extra oil that they weren't getting, mainly because of the pandemic. Everybody kind of quieted down. And once the pandemic opened up, Now all of a sudden we've got lots of people moving around. We need people, we need more resources, minerals, fuel, whatever. So, I mean, he's had to kind of cover a shortfall in that, but it really doesn't amount to much of anything. The world still needs an awful lot of stuff, and coal, oil, whatever. And Australia has a big part of that. Everybody has a big part of that. We're now a global place, so that the impact of one thing tends to impact something else. And Putin's playing around is kind of causing a lot of turmoil all over the globe. Europeans don't want to mess with it too much because they have the most to lose. China is basically staying very quiet. They're kind of like, yeah, we know what's going on, and we're just going to like be quiet about it. And we have our own problems, and we're going to, even though we are supporting Russia in some ways, we're just going to be quiet about it and see how it all works out. And then we will decide what we want to do. Remember, China is number 2 in the world economically, and they are not going to give that up. Their biggest problem is Taiwan. They keep threatening Taiwan in very, very different ways. But by and large, they're still kind of going, if we open up this, I don't think they want a war. I don't think they want a all-out war. It really serves them no purpose. And over the 300 or 400 years or 1,000 years that I've learned about China, they, not that they don't war at times, but it's when they need it and when it kind of works for them. And in this case, I don't think anything works for them. That Taiwan is interesting. They keep threatening it, and hopefully that they'll take it over. But Hong Kong and Taiwan are these kind of rogue little states that Chinese, mainland Chinese government doesn't like. And eventually they will eat them up somehow. Not sure how, and it will depend an awful lot on the United States. It's the United States. I was just actually watching a hearing where there are people who are going, well, wait a minute, what happens if the Chinese essentially take over Taiwan? Are we going to do anything? Because we've never really said, yeah, we'll take care of Hong Kong and Taiwan if something bad happens. But we've insinuated it. We've said, they're our buddies. And if our buddies get attacked, maybe we'll do something about it. Not really, but maybe. So the whole thing gets to be really complicated at times, especially because of nukes. And we have all the nukes. Russia has all the nukes. So we're really talking about a different kind of war. If someone tosses a nuke in the wrong place at the wrong time, we're talking about some really bad times coming. Because if you start that game of tossing a nuke at somebody, now we've got countries like us and Russia that have thousands of nukes. And you can just create a big cinder of the whole globe after we start shooting the nukes back and forth. Nobody wants that. Haven't wanted that for years and years. When I forget what the term was, we used to create mutual destruction, so that we basically wouldn't do it because we both know, Russia and us, that if we throw this and start this game, we're both dead. The whole world is dead. We're all crispy critters out there because of that. And that is a threat that's always been out there since, I don't know, the 70s, 60s, whatever. And it's very difficult to put that away. Sometimes we've forgotten about the Cold War, but really, Putin has brought the Cold War back to us. We've kind of forgot about it. Everything was okay. We kind of make sure that Mr. Reagan was like the god that took care of that. No, he didn't actually, but whatever. I can let the Republicans crow about their wonderful savior. It really didn't work quite that way, but it really has come out to be who really is the big guys in the globe. And it turns out that economically, China is looking very big. We're number 2. When it comes to warfare with nukes, it's Russia and it's us. So, I mean, you all of those things kind of shift around at times, so you have to be kind of careful. Anyway, didn't mean to get off on a tangent there, but no matter how you get around it, we're here. Spring is coming. We're going to have a good time. We're going to make whatever we can make and hope that the world doesn't blow up in the process. So everybody be safe. Have a good time. Bye-bye.